Hey everyone, welcome to MSA 2019. My name is Paul,
My name is Evelyn.
and we're glad that you're interested in Microsoft Cognitive Services. With the power of machine learning, we'll show you how you can easily add intelligence to your app using Microsoft Cognitive Services API. We will build a web application that can detect and respond to your emotion in real time.
And it's Try Not to Laugh Challenge the game. I think it's best to show you guys a demo.
That's a great idea, Evelyn.
Yeah?
Alright, so this is the game that you guys will be building. So simply put in a link of a funny video and then click start game. Well, let's see how long you can last, Evelyn.
Oh. Okay, just keep working.
Good job, Artie. Good job, buddy. Good job. Keep pedaling, keep pedaling, keep pedaling. Oh!
Well, I hope you guys are excited.
Before we start, make sure you read MSI GitHub documentation provided in the link below.
This video will be following the guide that we have written up on GitHub, so pause the video and get your development environment set up. If you're ready, Evelyn will take you through part 1.
So before you create your React app, make sure that you navigate to your root folder, which is the folder that you want to put all your source code and your app inside. Open your command terminal and type in the command npm init react app my app. Enter. Alright, so when you see happy hacking, which means we have successfully created React app, and as you can see here, we have my app, which is our React app, and we navigate to it. And to run the app, we use the command npm start. And then it will open your app on localhost 3000. And voila, this is your app. And now we will move on to installing packages. We need to install React Player and prop types. So first of all, if your app is still running, then press Ctrl+C for Windows or Command+C for macOS in your terminal. It will ask you terminate package drop, then yes, enter, and then make sure that you are in project folder my app, and let's install React Player by typing in npm install react player save, and then we will install prop types by typing in the command npm install save prop types, enter. And now we are ready to go for the coding part. Now we will start building our code. I'm using Visual Studio Code. Go to File, Open Folder, navigate to your My App folder, and then select folder. So as you can see here in the source folder is the structure of your initial app. So now we will start to make a new folder inside of source, which name components. And inside the components folder, we will create new file by right click and new file. So in general, we will have 4 components, which are at video.js, displayer.js, title.js, and video.js. And the app.js file will gather on 4 these components together to build up the app. And now we're going to delete unnecessary files such as logo.svg, service worker, and then index.js. Delete this as well. And in the app.js, we will delete the whole thing here. Delete logo.svg. And now we will import all these components inside app.js. So import title. Next we will import displayer and import add video. We will not import the video.js because the video.js will be included in the displayer.js, so it will be imported with a displayer component. And then import style sheet. So now we will use render method to display all these components within the app.js. So div, first one will be title, and the title will equal to no love challenge, close that, and then will be the add video component, close that. And here the component add video will handle the action of submitting both. Map it from add video.js to here and assign it as a parameter of add video function. And the add video function can be written as add video parameter is both submitted. So the add video function will have input parameter as both submitted and use setState method to assign the value of both submitted into post. Now we need to define the post here using constructor. So for the constructor method, you can think of it as a container which contains the stage, and in the stage has the post which has the video link, and the link here we set it as empty, and it will take whatever link that you will input in it to display here. And don't forget to export the default app which will be used in the index.js. And continue to the render method, we will have another div, and this div will set the class name equal to video wrapper, and this div will contain the displayer component, and inside the displayer component we will have post equal to this.state.post. Now we come into title.js, the title component. First of all, we will import React and component, and we define the class title extend component, and render method return, and export default title. So for every component, we need to export it so that it can be imported inside another component, such as the main component app.js here. Now inside the class title, we will have h1 this.props.title. So this props will map whatever we input here to render as a title and display it as a component in app.js. If you have this title appear many places within the project, you don't need to change every place that it appears. You just need to change the value here, and this props will map it through the whole project. So this video component will define and call the video function, which will get the video URL that we put into add video.js, map it over to video.js and play it. So here we will control how the video will be played. First of all, we import React from React, import prop types. So first of all, we will have function video, which has parameter called props, and inside that we will have const post equal to props.post. It will then return div React player, closing tag. The React player will have the URL equal to post.video link. This video link will be input here, and this will set the state of the post submitted and then display it. It will have playing, which means we set playing equal to true, and controls. And now we will call the function. So prop types give the current component a property of prop types equal to an object. This object will have as many prop types as the amount of props that be passed on the current component. In this case, video component will have one prop type called post, which is a mandatory prop types of an object, which means whatever prop in the form of post from the component instance must be an object. Is required means that if there is no post being passed into our displayer component, it will throw a big error. And now, don't forget to export default video component. Okay, so one minor error, which is import starship.css. Delete this one and import starship.css in the components folder. Now we'll move on to displayer.js. First of all, we will import React, import prop types, and import video component. We will have a function called displayer, which has parameter props, These props will map through the box and then it will return the video component. So the displayer function will map through the video link in video component and display that value, which is a video in this case. So we will call the displayer function. So similarly, in this case, displayer function will have one prop type called post, which is a mandatory prop type of an array, which means whatever prop in the form of post from the component instance must be an array, and export default displayer. Next, we will move to addVideo.js. This component will handle the action of URL input. First of all, we import React and component. We will have a class addVideo extend component, and this will have a constructor, and this constructor will help us to handle submit. This dot handle submit equal to this dot handle submit dot bind this, and we will have a function called handle submit. It will pass in an event. We have a const video link, which means we assign the value of the video link into the constant called video link, and then we will have const post equal to video link, and then if video link, then we will add that video to display, and then render method return div. So we will have a class name equal to form and type form on submit will equal to this dot handle submit, and we will have input tag whose type will equal to text, and placeholder will equal to link, and name will equal to link, and we will have a play button. Don't forget to export the addVideo component as well. And now we go to index.js. We need to import starship.css as well. So after we have done all the call function for the app to handle input and play a video URL, now we do a little bit about CSS. Inside the starship.css, we will set the UI for H1 and video wrapper. So H1 text align center, and video wrapper position relative, padding bottom 56.25%, padding top 30 pixel, height 0, border 1 pixel, solid white, overflow hidden, and video wrapper iframe, video wrapper object, and video wrapper embed position absolute, top 0, left 0, width 100%, and height 100%. Save all the file and go to your command prompt. Type in the command npm start, enter. Okay, so now we have a little bit of error here. Displayer.js, the prop type is not defined. So we come here, displayer.js. It's because I have a typo error in the import here. So make sure that it's spelled correctly. And then, so line 5, basically I have a typo here. Save it. And then everything is fine now. So I will try to copy and paste this YouTube video into our app and click play.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier.
Now you're good to go to the next part, which is implementing cognitive services.
Thank you for that awesome part 1, Evelyn. So as you might have already seen in the demo, in this part we'll be looking at building a simple emotion detector using your webcam and Cognitive Services Face API. So let's get started. First of all, I would just comment out the previous section in app.js just to make our development much easier so we can test our component individually. So let's implement a component called myWebcam. So I'm going to name that file mywebcam.js. And essentially, this component is going to be returning our webcam video preview. So to help us implement that easily, I will be using a library called React Webcam. So let's go ahead and install the package for that. So open your command line and run npm install React Webcam in your project directory, of course. And let's Just let that run for a while. Cool. And once that's finished, we are going to be creating my webcam component class that will return the webcam component that we just installed. So let's go ahead and do it. Don't forget that you need to import webcam component from React webcam package that we just installed, and we're going to create a class component called my webcam. And my webcam class is going to have one render method which returns a div, and inside this div we are going to return the webcam component. Cool. And we will need to define some properties. So I'm going to define a cont called video constraint, and this will contain some properties that will help us format our video element. Cool. Here, what's really important is that we want to be able to reference to this webcam component later on so that we can invoke get screenshot on it. So we're going to use a ref prop. So let's set it like so, and over here I am going to set a ref function, set ref, which takes in a webcam, and this is gonna assign the webcam component to a webcam variable so that later on we can refer to it. So let's just go ahead and put in the rest of the props that we need. And here we'll pass in our video constraint. Video constraint. Cool. Save the file, and obviously don't forget to export default my webcam so that we make this component available to be imported in other component. So let's go back to app.js. We first want to import my webcam component that we just created, and in the return statement let's put down our my webcam. Let's go ahead and test your app. So in your project directory, open the command shell, PowerShell, and run npm start. Great, so the webcam component seems to be working. That's great. Now back in my webcam component class, let's go ahead and write a function that will continuously take a photo using our webcam, and we'll send that photo off for analysis to the Face API. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to call this function start capturing. Cool. So what I've done here is that once start capturing method gets triggered, we're going to be using set interval to periodically, every 1 second or so, take a photo using our webcam get screenshot, and then the result that will be returned from get screenshot function is the base64 encoded string of the image. So we're just going to console log that. Let's implement a button here to start taking the photo. And for the on-click event handler, we are simply going to invoke start capturing method. And let's call this button start game. And we're going to have to put another div, since a return statement can only return one div. Cool. So let's test that out. So open your console with F12, and if I click Start Game, you can see that the image is being taken every 1 second. Great. Next, we're going to be implementing a fetch data function to send off the photo to the Face API and hopefully get our result back. But before we go ahead and do that, we need to do a few things first. So this set interval function that's running when you click the Start Game button, there's really no way of clearing this interval when the game's over, and we don't really want to leave this running. So I'm going to assign this set interval to an object. So let's go ahead and in the constructor, we can define a property of this class called timer ID, and I'm just going to initialize that to null. And also we want to have some sort of a flag that signify that the capturing process is still running, so that if any data that arrive after the game is already over, we can discard them and we're not going to display that to the user. So I'm going to have a flag called is capturing, and obviously its initial state is going to be set to false. Cool. So assign this to timer ID, and when the user click Start Game button and Start Capturing method started running, we want to set the flag is capturing to true. And only when the game is over, we're going to switch this back to false. Another thing is that the Face API only takes in the data format of byte array, and at the moment, Start Capturing method only returns a base64 encoded string of our image. So we're going to need another helper function that will help us convert the base64 encoded string to a byte array so that we can send that off to the API endpoint. So let's go ahead and implement convert to byte array function, and this is going to take in an image. So before we do this, we're going to be using a library which can be installed from npm package manager, and this library is called base64 JS. So let's go ahead and install that. So this convert to byte array function is going to take in our base64 encoded string of the image and convert that to a byte array. So let's go ahead and implement that. And to use toByteArray function from the module that we just installed through npm, we need to first load the module. And what I'm doing here is I am taking the image encoded string and slice off the header that we don't need. We just want the pure base64 encoded string content, and we are going to return the byte array format using base64 toByteArray function and pass in the base64 string content. Cool, that looks great. Now we're ready to implement fetch data function, which will take in the byte array and make a post request to the API endpoint. So let's go ahead and implement the function. We're going to call it fetch data, and this is going to take in the byte array. And here, the two variables that is really important is going to be the API key and the API endpoint of our Cognitive Services Face API. Here, we're going to use a fetch data, which is going to make a post request and we're going to pass in the endpoint, which is our endpoint variable here. And then the body of our request is going to contain the byte array data, which is our image. And it's important that we set the correct header as well. So let's go ahead and set the necessary headers that we need. Don't forget to set the method to post. And for debugging purposes, we are just going to console log the response status from the API. Cool. So this is looking good, but now we need the API key and our Face API endpoint. So let's head over to Azure portal. So on your Azure portal, click on Create a Resource, search for Face. There are other API that you can use as well from cognitive services, but today we're going to be looking into Face. Click on Create. Give it a name. And in the pricing tier, choose S0, which gives a rate limit of 10 calls per second. This should give us enough room to be more flexible. Give it a few seconds. And once the deployment is done, go to your resource, click on Overview, and here you can copy the API endpoint. Make sure you copy that and put it in your API endpoint variable. At the end, we want to append detect with the parameter return face attribute equal emotion. Cool. And this is because if you go to the Face API reference documentation, you will see that in the return JSON data, there's a lot of data that can be returned, and one of it is face attributes. So we want to just filter all of that out for today to keep our app simple. And face attribute has emotion property. So this is exactly what we're doing here. We are querying the Face API endpoint to return us the face attribute, specifically emotion. Cool. So make sure to grab your API key as well. Go to Keys tab, copy one of the key, and put it into the API key variable. Perfect. Now you're ready to test it. So in start capturing function, we're going to replace console.log with a call to fetch data function and passing in the byte array. So first we need to convert this image base64 encoded string into a byte array image using the helper function convert to byte array that we defined earlier. Cool. And once that's in the form of a byte array, we're gonna call our fetch data function and passing in the byte array image. Sweet. So this is essentially going to happen every 1 second, taking a photo, converting to a byte array, and sending that byte array off to the API endpoint. Let's test our app. Cool, so let's test it out to see if our API is working correctly. Click Start Game. And that's great. So 200 OK is the response status being returned and console log. So that's showing us that we have hooked up the API correctly. Great. So next, we want to be able to display the result returned from the API, the happiness intensity value. So we're going to create a component that can reflect those values when they changes. I'm gonna add another file called emotion analysis.js, and this component will return two things: my webcam component that we created earlier, plus the result banner which will display the percentage of the player happiness. So let's go ahead and create those function component. Cool. So to be able to display those value being returned when they are returned from the API, we need to use state. So I'm going to find a constant and call a useState function. So React useState function will return two objects. First being the state object, which will be our result, the happiness value, and a function to update that state. And I'm going to call that function update result. So useState takes in one argument, which is the initial state. So the initial state of the happiness value, we're going to set it to 0. And to use the useState, don't forget to import useState from React. Cool. So for my webcam to be able to update that result state object, we need to pass this update result function into the component so that it can be invoked when we receive the API result. So I'm going to call this handler on receive result and pass in the update result function. Cool. Back in my webcam, we're going to be converting the response into a JSON object and then extracting the happiness intensity value from the data we received. So let's go ahead and do that. We first check if the response is okay, and then we're going to convert it into a JSON object. Once that's done, from the data we received, we are going to extract the happiness value by grabbing the first item in the JSON array and checking, which means the player face exists. We are going to return face attribute emotion property, specifically the happiness value. Otherwise, if there's no face existed in the array, the data array return, we're simply just going to return 0. Then we're going to convert the happiness value into an integer. How do we do that? We simply call math.round and then multiplying happiness by 100 so that we get a percentage integer value. Go. Next up, we have to display this result happiness value to the user. So here, we're going to check first if the capturing is still happening and the happiness value is less than 100. If that's the case, we're simply just going to update the player with the current happiness value. So we call this.props.onReceive result. And as you might remember, onReceiveResult is the update method that we pass into the webcam component, so that we can update the happiness value to the result state object. Cool. So if the happiness value is less than 100, you want to display that to the user. Otherwise, in the case where happiness reaches 100%, we're going to stop the game. So, and clear interval on the timer ID which is that running set interval object that we have. And then we're also going to set the is capturing flag to false. And for the props on receive update, we're just going to update it to 100%. So back in our emotion analysis.js, underneath my webcam, we're going to be returning a result component as well. And we need to define a function component result, which will take in say props containing our result state object. Slightly misspelled emotion analysis here, so just gonna fix that quickly. Cool. And for the result component, we want to pass in result state object as its props. Cool. So inside the function component result, we are going to return and here we're basically checking if the result state object is less than 100, then we will just display the result to the user as a percentage. Otherwise, if the result is 100, then we're gonna instead return a game over string. Cool. So don't forget to add in export default emotion analysis. Cool. Back in app.js, let's use emotion analysis component that we just created instead of my webcam. So import emotion analysis from component emotion analysis, and we'll use that instead of my webcam. In my webcam.js, we might want to decrease this from 1 second to 200 milliseconds. So what's happening here is that we are now going to take a photo every 0.2 second, send that off to the API, and as soon as we receive the happiness intensity value, we're going to update our result state object. Let's see what that looks like on the web. So click Start Game. And you can see that it's being reflected in real time. Cool. So last thing we are going to implement is making our entire emotion analysis component draggable, so you can drag it anywhere without obscuring your video preview from part 1. So to do that, we are going to use React Draggable module. So go to npm install React Draggable. Sweet. And that's really easy to use. So to use it, first, as always, import Draggable from React Draggable. And whichever component you want to make it draggable, you simply surround that component with a draggable component. Cool. And let's test it. Alright, so now if we try to move this around, you can see that it's working perfectly. So let's go back to our app.js, and now it's time to uncomment part 1. Cool. So part 1 is uncommented. Now if we go back, and you can see that our try not to laugh challenge is working perfectly now. So if I just select one of the video to play, and let's click Start Game. Yes, you can see that I smiled a little bit there and it's game over. Cool. And that's it for part 2. I hope you guys enjoyed learning a little bit about cognitive services and React. Thank you so much for watching.
I hope that you enjoyed the video and learned a lot. Make sure that you check out the submission criteria on phase 1 on MSA GitHub documentation.
Remember, this is meant to be an example to show you the power of cognitive services and React. I hope we have inspired you some amazing ideas. Good luck with the rest of phase 1.